I think mine and Ed's sort of talks really complement each other. What Ed was talking about was something which was solely within the organisation and how you get people to share knowledge and to communicate with each other within your organisation. What I'm going to tell you about is the story that we've been through at NatCen, where we started with sharing internally and wanting our staff to share with each other, to learn from each other, to develop better practice together, and how we thought, hang on a sec, we're internal, let's take that external and what we built as a result of that. So I'm going to talk mainly about how you build a community of practice and what that means in terms of what you need to do as an L&D facilitator of that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the technology, but the technology is not rocket science actually when it comes down to it. So for those of you who don't know, NatCen Social Research is an educational charity. We're the leading independent research organisation in the UK, so we carry out some of the most complex and challenging social research, all about social policy, so it could be about unemployment, political attitudes, it could be about your views on immigration or crime. In fact, anyone here ever done a survey for NatCen? At some point, you may get your door knocked on by us. So we're the people who knock on your door on a Saturday and ask you difficult questions about difficult issues in society. And we do that because we believe that social research has the power to make life better and to inform policy and practitioners about what the general public are saying. So as a charity, our mission is to give a voice to the general public about the services that they receive, about the society that they live in. Because we're an educational charity, we also have a role to play in upholding good practice and the standards of research in the UK. So a lot of my role is about helping other organisations to lift the quality of the evidence and the research that they do. So that's a little bit about the organisation. I need to tell you a little bit about the context which prompted our communities of practice. So 2009, 2010, we all lived through the start of the recession. What that meant for us was that the social research market collapsed from 100% to 50% almost overnight. The combination of the economic recession and the Conservative government clamping down on public spending meant that there was much less money to go around in our sector. And we're a charity, but we have to compete for the work that we do. So we have to compete for government contracts, public sector contracts. And the people that we compete with are large international market research companies who can move money around their business. We're a charity, we don't have that option. So we were already facing quite intense competition. The two things combined meant that we were facing much sharper competition in our kind of market that we depended on. And coupled with that, the technological change that's happened in the last 15 years in the research world is absolutely tremendous. So it used to be, if you wanted to conduct research with people, you literally sent somebody out and knocked on somebody's door and stood there with a paper questionnaire, ticked the boxes with them, went back to the office, coded that into a computer. The world has changed. You can now collect research data from Twitter, from Facebook, in online research panel groups. So there's a whole other world of technology that, in order to thrive and survive, a research organisation's staff need to keep up with. And then, as you can imagine, we're holding countless units of data of people's personal, highly confidential, highly sensitive information. So there's a big legal and political and IP issue that we have to look after as an organisation. In order to respond to all of those challenges, we did what any good organisation does. We had a bit of a restructure. And one of the things that we did was we took our technical research staff out of their technical group. So if I'm a qualitative researcher, and I used to work with a whole group of qualitative researchers, and we would work on a project with our colleagues who worked on surveys. But our family was our qualitative research family. That didn't work for our clients. They wanted us to be crime and justice specialists or to be specialists in the health policy. So we moved our people into policy teams. But we knew, partly because they were telling us, partly because we'd seen the risk, what's that going to do to their professional practice? We need to keep them talking to each other so that innovation, so that their learning doesn't get locked into policy teams and not shared across the organisation. So we had formal training programs, and those are great for actually giving people the skills initially to get started. But they won't help you if you need people to keep constantly refreshing their skills, thinking about what does this new challenge mean for how I go about my day-to-day work? So that was what we wanted to do, was to actually get people to climb out of their project and department silos and think about, what does this mean for our practice as researchers? What does this mean for how we go about our work, how we deal with the people that we do research with, how we engage participants, and making sure that people were sharing innovation. So I think probably in common with lots of organisations, we had an issue with silos. We had an issue with people not looking above them and not sharing good practice or better practice. So we needed to do something about that. And what we chose to do was to introduce communities of practice, but I hasten to add we don't call these, well, I call them communities of practice, but we don't use that language in the organisation because it wouldn't mean much to most of the people that I work with. So they're all called slightly different things, but essentially what they are a reflective space for a group of practitioners to come together and to share the challenges and opportunities of the work that they do. Now, this is used very often in health and social care settings. It's used much less often in academic settings. But we thought it would work because they essentially build on the expertise in the building. So we are saying to our staff, you're experts in what you do, you're experts in the challenges that you face, let's bring you together, let's get you talking, let's get you sharing those experiences, and let's see if we can build new and different approaches to what we're doing. And it builds on passion, and passion's a really important part of what we do at NatCen. Most of our staff come to work for us because of the mission that we have to create really great research. So they want to be improving their practice. So that was why we introduced communities of practice. And we introduced 4, all based around those technical families that had been dissolved. And they have done a whole range of different activities. So they could have face-to-face activities like brown bag lunches. They had seminars. They had people presenting case studies, external speakers coming in. They had action learning together, and virtual sharing of knowledge. So we had somewhat, and I'll talk a bit more about this in questions maybe, somewhat unsuccessfully in terms of the technology infrastructure. We had both SharePoint and an intranet, and neither of them worked particularly well, but we have got now people sharing wikis, they're working together collaboratively online. So a whole range of different activities, all of which was about supporting and driving forward our skills and knowledge in the field that we're working in as professionals, but also that ultimately delivers for our clients because we're at the cutting edge and we're constantly refreshing the offer we show to them. So I'm a huge fan of networks and communities, and people who know me know that I'm quite active on Twitter, and I have what I call my PLN on Twitter, my personal learning network. And I asked them to tell me what they thought made a successful community. And I was somewhat relieved to find out that they shared lots of the same things that I'm about to talk to you about. But I really liked these quotes, so I just thought I'd leave those up there for a moment for you to look at. The one that really struck me was Martin Cousins tweeted at me and said, "Go and fish where the fish are," and that's something I'll say a bit more about. Don't build a community just because you think it's a good place for it to be. Think about where people are already. So I want to talk about what makes a successful community and what the steps are that we went through. But the other thing I want to say is that as well as being a fantastic resource for L&D, our communities of practice have turned into a real business generator. So each of those communities of practice started to work together for business development. They started to be like innovation labs, creating new ideas and products for the organisation. So it's not just about our staff learning together, it's also about a sense of community and a shared ownership of driving the business forward. And that's been really important. And before I go on, I just want to say that what we did was we said, this is great, we're all talking to each other. What about all the voices from outside? So we got a small grant to set up a network between ourselves and researchers outside of NatCen, very specifically focused on looking at how you use social media, so Google and Twitter, for social research. That was 4 years ago when we had that 1 year of seed funding. We started with about 50 people at a conference. We've now got 3,000 Twitter followers. We have a Twitter chat every month. We've got a blog which has over 600 blogs on it. That is people from across the world in our field sharing their knowledge and expertise with each other. And it's done immeasurable benefits to our organisation to have been seen to be leading that community, and for our researchers to be able to talk to researchers in all different sectors who are using new technology, trying out different things, learning from the mistakes that they made so that we don't have to make those mistakes. So I can't underestimate how powerful it's been for us as an organisation. So, what are the steps? Well, the first thing that is really, really important is to build some strong foundations. So think about where you're aiming for and then work backwards and think about what you need to do to get there. It is important to get the senior management team on side. I'd been buttering them up for about 6 to 8 months before I actually went to them with the idea. I'd started tweeting myself. I'd been role modelling being social in the organisation. And I'd been trying to drop it into the conversations and the discussions as time went on. You need senior management support because they're the ones who'll validate the time that staff spend in communities of practice. So you need them to be allowing that to go on timesheets. You need their investment if you need technological infrastructure. So if you're going to build an online platform or a virtual platform for the community, you need that resource to come from somewhere. But most importantly, you need your senior management team saying this is a good thing, it's valuable, it's working for the organisation. And I have to say that our CEO got on board straight away and was really visible in her support of those communities. The second thing is to find out about your community, and I'll come on and talk a bit more about that in a moment, but understanding who your potential members are and what they want is really important. And the third thing is thinking about your role. So I think the most striking thing I can leave you with is if you're running a community of practice, it's not your community of practice, it's actually the community's community of practice or network, whatever you want to call it. It's theirs, and your role as L&D is to facilitate, to engage, to enthuse, to curate and channel their enthusiasm, but it's not to direct. You're very much in a supportive shaping role, and they are driving the agenda. And it's how you make them drive the agenda that's the key to successful communities. And then if you are going to use social and digital tools with your network and community, then think about where they're at before you start. So don't assume that just because everyone's got a smartphone, everyone knows how to tweet, everyone knows how to write a blog, everyone knows how to use Facebook. Whatever platform it is you're using, think about whether you need to do a little period of upskilling. So actually, for the year before we launched the communities, I spent several periods of time where I took our staff through something known as the 23 things. Has anyone ever heard of that? Yeah, so a couple of people have heard of it. I'm happy to talk about it afterwards. Essentially, the 23 things are 23 things that you do as a group which introduce you to a range of different digital and social tools. There are various examples of it on the internet that you can actually just take and use with your colleagues. What it does is it gets people confident about using the tools, it takes away some of the suspicion, and it starts the conversation and the dialogue about why it's okay to be doing those sorts of things in work time, because lots of my staff are like, well, we're not allowed to use Twitter, we're not allowed. And I was like, whoever told you that? You know, nobody's ever told them they weren't, they just assumed. So there's lots of misapprehensions that you need to get over. Think about your community, think about who they are and what they want, because it's their community actually. So don't make assumptions, ask questions, go and actually ask them, what is it you want from this? What do you want to gain from being brought together as a community? And while we're at it, how do you want to be brought together? So you can do that face-to-face, on the telephone, you can use a Twitter poll. It depends who that audience is, but make sure that you spend some time thinking about what it is they want, because unless you're offering them something that they want, they won't stay. Even if they come and they're curious and have a look, they won't stay, they won't come back again. And for us, it was thinking about different cultures, which will sound strange because we're a UK-based organisation. We're not huge. At the time when we started these, we had 330 staff. We have 1,000 field workers across the country doing the interviews on the doorstep. But actually, culturally, our 4 offices are very different. So we really had to think about the tone of voice that we used and how we addressed the campaign to get people engaged. So think about who they are and what they want. If you're working internationally, you need to think about cultural differences on a grander scale, and our international network forces us to think about that all the time. And think about, it's fine to schedule a Twitter chat for 6 o'clock on a Monday in the UK, but what does that make network members who are based in Australia or Japan or North America feel? You know, are they getting up at a ridiculous hour just so they can take part? How do we deal with that? So can't underestimate enough how important it is to know the people that you're building this community for. And engage them. And this was something we learnt really, really quickly. And it goes back to that role of L&D not being in control and directing, but supporting. The best thing you can possibly do is to get the people in the community doing the community activities. So if you've got a blog, have those people running that blog for you, doing the blog editing, inviting blog contributions from other people. If you run a Twitter chat, have them run it. It doesn't need to be you that's running it. Your role will always be to remain constant in the community, so you're there seeding questions, following up conversations, making sure that people aren't being left out of the discussion that goes on. But ideally, you want your membership to take control of the network and to set and shape the agenda. So actively engage them in doing things, partly because there's an awful lot to be done to keep a community of practice going, so you need people to be actively involved in it. It's hard work. It's going to take more time than you anticipate. People think, oh, I can set up a social platform, whether it's a SharePoint or it's an external blog platform, or set up a Twitter account, and people will come. It actually takes a lot of effort and a lot of time invested in it to build relationships, because at the heart of a community of practice or a community of learning is trust, is people feeling that they can be open and frank and share not just their successes, but where things didn't go well, because that's how you learn. So you have to have conversations, lots of them. You have to be present. So I guess I underestimated the amount of time that would take, and it's been a joy for me, but it's also been an ongoing part of my time that has to be allocated to it. But one of the things that you can do is to reach out, and I think this is really important if you're working just within an organisation, that look for other communities that are around similar topics or similar areas, or might have something of benefit to share with your network, and link up with them. So reach out. You don't have to be an island. You don't have to be doing it on your own. So our community of practice outside, which is about social media research, now links up with academic networks on Twitter that are full of people doing PhDs using these methods. We also link up with other professional disciplines that are trying out social media. So, for example, the health profession is very much getting into social media now, how it can be used for research around health and social care. So we actually co-host Twitter chats. We reciprocate by retweeting their materials and engaging their members in the discussion. And the key thing is that you have to show some reciprocity. So you give to receive, and that's the way it works really well. But what you do by reaching out is you bring different voices in. And if you don't bring different voices in, you have the danger of becoming an echo chamber. And if you're not hearing anything different, then people probably aren't learning. And I'm all about what are my staff learning? How are they moving forwards? So bring different, even dissenting voices in, because that will help you to really, really understand what it is about practice that you need to change or develop. And I think this next one's on a similar theme. I always say to people that if you're building a network or a community, make the walls a bit porous. Don't be restrictive about who can join it. So yes, these were research communities of practice, but we didn't stop our operational staff coming along, because they work on project teams with the researchers, and they need to understand if the researchers are about to launch into a different way of doing things. So we were quite open, and when we went to the international network, we deliberately targeted people outside of social science disciplines, because we wanted to hear what was going on in information technology. If you're going to do research with Twitter and Google, you need to understand the algorithms behind how they provide the feed, and so you need those people in your network to start to learn and understand. A really, really practical point, one of the big mistakes we made with this is our NSS, never name your network that. That stands for New Social Media, New Social Science. Now take apart the fact that not much is new anymore. That's a hell of a mouthful, and I've never even been able myself to get it out without tripping over it. Anyway, the problem is everybody recognises that as the hashtag for the network now. This is our platform. It's a straightforward word. Actually, it's a blog site. This is where everything goes on. We've got Twitter feeds from events. We've got tweets that are being sent by our members. We've got archived blogs written by our members. And basically everything's there. That's not how we started. How we started was with 5 platforms. I was hoping someone would gasp, because that is ridiculous. What we thought was, we've got lots of people who want to do different things in the network. Let's build a space, or lots of spaces, where they can choose where they go. I mean, you know, even hearing myself say that now, it sounds ridiculous. Of course, what happened was people didn't know where to go. They went to one place and it didn't have everything, so they went to another place and they had to log in there too. It was a bit of a nightmare. It took us about 3 months of remedial work with the community, and we basically just have gone to a blog and a Twitter account. That's all we needed. That's all you need, is a simple, engaging platform which is easy to use for people. So that's just a bit of a suggestion about thinking about platforms, technology, if you're going to use it. You don't need all singing, all dancing thing. You know, that is free, that blog site. We don't pay anything for it. It's one of the free blogging sites. It is quite important, I think, in a learning community to establish a rhythm. So we have a Twitter chat every month on a Tuesday at the same time every month. People know that happens. They know to congregate on Twitter at that point in time. They know that if they look the next day, they'll get a story file. If we're having a face-to-face activity, they know that there'll be a blog before and a blog after. So that's a rhythm that's predictable. It allows people to kind of schedule it into their workflow. And that's quite important. But the other thing I think is really great about a rhythm is, if you've got a rhythm, if the energy and enthusiasm in the network or the community starts to flag, you can kick the rhythm to the side and introduce something new, and it sparks up people's enthusiasm and engagement. So having a rhythm is great. Disrupting a rhythm is even better sometimes. And that means trying something new. And as I've said, we've got about 3,000 followers on Twitter. We've got around 800 registered members of the network. And lots of them are at different points in their careers. Some of them are still at university. Some of them are professors who've been doing social media research for 25 years. And we thought, why don't we ask them if they want to write something about the state of social research and social media? They were already blogging for the blog. And in 3 months last year, we got 53 blogs written by our members about things that were important to them. And we got it published. It went straight to #1 in the bestsellers. Our network members got enthused about it. They got active by taking part in it. And it really helped them to think about the contribution they were making to the community. Now, that's something I wouldn't have dreamt of doing 4 years ago. I wouldn't even have known how to do it. And to be honest, I would have been a bit scared about doing it. But I just learned that you just got to try things sometimes. And it's been great particularly for our sort of early career researchers in the network. So try something new. And then the last thing I'm going to say is enjoy it. There is nothing better than watching a community of practice, a community of learners come together, share frankly with each other about their experiences of their day-to-day work, help each other solve solutions. You know, it's been really great to watch those internal communities become like mentoring networks. It's almost like an apprenticeship model. You know, newer staff join and they get to learn about how it's done at NatCen and how we're changing how it's done at NatCen. So make some time to enjoy it. Okay, great. Thank you. Oops.
Keeping them to time. But I thought there was some fascinating and really interesting stuff that came out of that there. I think we've got about 20 minutes worth of question and answer available to us now. If you've got a burning question, do we have a roving mic at all? Brilliant. Yep, thank you.
I just saw a hand go up there. I'll be right with you.
Thank you.
This way. It's yours.
So, gentleman at the front first. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how do you get your learners to reach out to other community of practices? And we have created some community of practice. I just don't know if that's something that you have done a step by yourself, or you have told them just go and connect.
Well, how to get them to move beyond the organisation and to reach out.
How?
It's a combination of three things, I think. It's role modelling it. So I was doing it. It's bringing the external voices in so that people aren't scared of them. And it's giving people licence to do it. One of the biggest hurdles that we faced was that staff didn't think they were allowed to talk about their work externally. And what we were trying to get them to see was actually you're going to benefit from this, the organisation's going to benefit from it. Okay, we don't want you sharing commercially confidential information, but our staff are bright. They, once they were given a framework and a remit to do it, they started to do it. But it's incremental. Some people go like a duck to water with social and going external. Some people are much more hesitant about it, and you just have to vary how you approach that with different people.
So with the confidential stuff, do you have did you end up then sometimes with two kind of forums, one with confidential, commercial sharing?
Do you know what? For us, it very rarely crops up. Because everything that we do is publicly published at the end of a project. So we write a report which includes a big methodological appendix about how we did the research. So it's very rare that there's something. So the things that we wouldn't want our staff talking to competitors about is our day rates, and that doesn't tend to come up in a learning conversation. So we try not. I try not to have two separate conversations. I try just to have the one, partly because of time resources.
Thank you, Kandy. Julie, you had your hand up next.
Hi, Kandy, thank you. I just wanted to ask, obviously you've got quite a large community now, so if they're generating a lot of content, is it just you that's doing all of the facilitation, or how big is your team? And can you tell us some of the challenges and benefits that you have to the way that you organise things?
Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges we have is it's an unfunded network now, so we have no funding coming in for it. I have a team of myself plus 2 researchers who give their time when they're not on project work to the network, and we have around about, I'd say, 5 active network members who take very particular roles. So one of them manages the Twitter account, one of them manages the blog, so they keep an eye on making sure that there are blogs lined up and they're edited, and so I would not be able to do it all myself, but I have to be constant because you keep seeding questions, really.
Sorry, just a follow-up question then. So is that actually understood to be part of their job role, or is that just an extension that everybody accepts is happening?
That's a really good question. Our research staff are expected to work on billable projects about 80% of their time, so the 20% that's left over has to fit their own learning and development and other things that they're interested in. And they get that their activity in the network is recognised as work of value to the organisation. So it's something that's seen as a benefit when it comes to review time. And that's important, that it is recognised and valued.
Hi, brilliant couple of projects. I'm here. I'm tucked away here. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Both really, really inspirational. I mean, what I'm interested in is if you're trying to engage with an audience who are like super, super busy. So these are people working 50, 60 hours a week. They don't engage with social at the moment, and it's seen as like, oh, it's another bloody thing I've got to do. How do you win them over? How do you get people that are that busy engaged?
For us, I talked about a fun element, but on the content side, so it's probably stuff generated centrally rather than sort of surfaced and shared from frontline employees. It was, you can't get this anywhere else. So it was probably a bit tough, or you'd get an email and you go, no problem, I'll attach that and I'll send it back, and you sort of meet their need that way. So first I started to send out a link to where it was on the platform, and then it was just, it's on Grow.
Okay.
So then you have to go and have a little bit of investigate. So the time thing, I totally appreciate. So at management level, that'd be the model. But our frontline guys, it's not just that they're working and they're busy. Their job is to be busy with you. Rather than hiding or sat away looking at something. So it was just, you try and make it second nature that you have to log on and download it or get it from there. And even things like their performance statistics. So you stay with us and you'll give us feedback, on hotels.com or TripAdvisor. That feeds in, but equally, we might send you an email questionnaire that we call TLC, and the employees get that data. So they see, it's that whole what's in it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. And for me, it was really important we did the 23 things because it allowed us to have those conversations. So, sitting with a group of colleagues and having them say, but isn't Twitter all about cats? Now, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll know it is a little bit about cats, but it's a lot about learning and development. And being able to have that conversation with them and say, these are the benefits that I've got from it. You know, I have met people that I would never have met in a million years. I know people in L&D in America now, whereas I wouldn't have done because I've never been there in a professional capacity. Being able to have that conversation and discuss the merits and you know, downsides to social with them. Because for lots of people who don't do it, they have lots of misconceptions about it. And actually, if you can tell them about the benefits to you, and they can see the benefits to the organisation, that's the most important thing. After we did the 23 things, we went from having 15 staff tweeting to having 90 staff tweeting about the organisation. And for an organisation whose mission is to make an impact with our research, that's unquantifiable in terms of the importance of that, of getting the word out about what we do.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Lady in the red, you had a question?
Thank you. My question was to Kandy, again, very similar to the last speaker. I'm part of a membership organisation, and our members are out there treating people, not sat behind a computer, and mostly they're over 30, so we have a big problem with member engagement, and I wanted to ask you, what are the 23 things?
Yeah, so basically the 23 things it's what it says on the tin. So you do 23 things. As you basically take a cohort of people through the programme together. And week 1, you might have to do 2 things. So it might be set a Twitter account up, follow 10 people. Week 2 might be explore the different platforms for blogging, write your first blog, and so on and so forth. It takes you through all the different digital tools. You can do, what we did was a combination of having the online platforms, and we put people into learning groups and got them to blog each week about what they'd learned, which was kind of modelling and practically trying it. You can also just do it virtually. I'll dig out some links for it and tweet them out later on. But it's a really, you know, it worked for us. And it started in library science, I think.
And there's a question over there. You need fit. Thank you.
A question for Ed. Do you have content on Grow for middle and senior managers? And if so, what type of thing is it? And do they engage with it?
Interesting question. Yeah, the more senior, the harder it is to get them to engage. And I was talking to people say, you know, is it age? Is it, you know, another barrier? You know, I know it, or it's just not my thing. One of the things that we're launching, because of that problem, one of the things that we're sort of launching now is we've put something together called the Leadership Academy. And it's because it's an LMS, we base everything around building it within a course. But that works for us. And it's a little bit like the 23 things, in as much as this learning academy is a number of different things that you now can gain access to that we've curated and put together. And some of it is raw information. Some of it is you get so many credits, so you can go to a couple of, say, London business presentations. You know, so book yourself on there, and then we're going to have a lunch and discussion about the content after the London Business Forum. We've put links to sites that we value and they should. So we've curated a number of different sites. So within one course, we're sort of saying this. These are the things that should matter to you. So the ideal would be that they change the way that the loud ones say do something. So then they endorse it and become the ambassadors for it. I'm also hoping we're about to start using sort of apps or sort of a spaced learning process. So we contact those senior people more regularly. So as long as they've got the app and they access the app, they don't have to necessarily log on. They would have their phones and walking around the hotel. So we give them really star pieces of information that they'd have never found out. So they sort of believe in the system. I think it's sort of like an online trust thing. So if I trust it that the information is credible and it's usable, I'll go back for more. And maybe because we started at that new higher level, we haven't worked it up, and we're just at that senior sort of general manager executive level now.
We're creeping towards 4:30. I think probably, unless there's any final questions, I've just got a couple of one that I want to throw at the panel, and then we'll probably move on there. Any final questions from the panel from the floor? Okay, thank you. Ed, Kandy, out of today? What have you got out of this session? What are you taking away from it?
I knew you were going to... You go first. You go first. Well, for me, when we were talking earlier, whether both in this session or the sessions that I've been to, I thought people would have different views about how knowledge should be shared. But actually, there's loads of people wanting to share information at all levels in the organisation. And somewhere there are people that go, that's not a good idea, that aren't here today. You know, and it's about winning those over. And that's my takeaway, that, you know, when you are working on your own, or, you know, in a very small team, you go, are we on the right track? Is this what everybody should be doing? And that's my takeaway, really.
And so I've got two takeaways, really. Well, one's a takeaway, one's a reflection. A reflection that 3 years ago, I don't think we would have had the same type of questions at the end of this session. 3 years ago, it would have been people saying, that will never work in my organisation. And so I think that's huge progress for the L&D community. And the second thing that I've taken away from the things that I've been involved in today is that this is learning technologies, but it's actually all about people, and the technology supports the people, and that's really come out loud and strong for me today. And you know, you can take a flashy bit of technology, but unless you've got the purpose and the people right, that technology is never going to solve your L&D issues for you. So that's what I'm taking away from it.
Great. Thank you very, very much. I would like you to also take some reflection at the end of today. Give some thought to what you've done today, what you learned, what you think to do about it. While you're thinking about that, would you please show your